Welcome to The Fourth Bottom Line, the podcast where we meet people from business, charities and politics who are a force for good. In each episode, I talk to my guests about their inner side and how their internal changes have led to their outer success stories. We talk about the failures, spirituality and sometimes the painful experiences that have made them the unique individuals they are today. The main aim being for us to learn from and be inspired by them for our own lives. So, if you desire change in yourself and the world around you, do keep listening. And please remember to hit subscribe on your podcast platform of choice to make sure you never miss an episode. Hello, my name is Paul Hargreaves. I'm the founder and Chief Empowerment Officer of Cotswold Fair and Flourish, two businesses that put people and planet before profit. In 2015, we became one of the first B Corps in the UK, and I've written two books, Forces for Good and The Fourth Bottom Line. I'm passionate about changing the world for better and realised many years ago that to do this, we must also change ourselves. The outer impact of people, planet and profit has to be mirrored by an inner change, and that's what I call my fourth bottom line.
We tackle holiday hunger. We basically take kids off of the estate and we take them to amazing attractions, but it's done to feed them in a really dignified way. So they get hot porridge and lots of fruit for breakfast, and then they get a warm lunch, and then we give them care packages if they need it at the end of the day. But the biggest challenge for me is that there will be kids that turn up to get on that coach, not having secured a place, and they're there in the hope that somebody doesn't turn up.
Wow.
And so that's really difficult because...
How do you say no to them?
Well, it's really difficult. I mean, we've got a people carrier, we've got extra ways of trying to get kids there. But, there have been on occasion times where we've had to drive off.
My guest today is Amy Kington. Amy, welcome to The Fourth Bottom Line.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks ever so much for having me.
So Amy is an award-winning business leader, entrepreneur, campaigner and community builder based in the Southwest. She's worked for Bristol City Football Club and the Football Association, as well as the local authority, health service and police force to drive positive change within the city. As a proud Bristolian, Amy is passionate about improving the life chances of young people and making the city a better place to live, learn and work. To that end, Amy is the co-founder and CEO of Community of Purpose, an award-winning social enterprise that transforms the lives and futures of young people by mobilising businesses who want to act as a force for good. Amy is also the co-founder and director of Purposeful Insight, a fast-growing agency that helps businesses across all sectors to execute their purpose, vision and initiatives. Amy, I also heard that you've been on Saturday Kitchen a few times, but I don't know what the opposite of a TV chef is, but it sounds like you are that. Tell us a bit about that to start off.
So I've got a friend that works in television, and I took a call not long after having my son, actually, and she said, can you give me a call back? Because I think it was in between, feeding. I phoned her and I said, what's up? She said, well, I've got this TV show that I'm involved in at the minute, and it involves Nadia from Bake Off, and we're looking for people that can't cook, won't cook. And I thought of you straight away. So it says everything, doesn't it, about how good my dinner parties are.
It's a reverse compliment somewhere there.
Yeah, it wasn't good. But yeah, it was really great fun. She came to the house. I mean, my son was pretty much weeks old. And the premise was that at the time I was actually quite keen on learning to cook better meals, more nutritious food, because although we were breastfeeding at the time, I knew that at some point I was going to have to go beyond burning an egg. And so it was a really fun experience. Nadia came to my house, and it actually caused quite a storm this episode, because she taught me how to make a fish pie using a tin
I watched it.
of hoops, spaghetti hoops. And then all the papers picked it up because, goodness me, that was just dreadful, wasn't it? Using a tin of spaghetti hoops. But it did mean that it was one of the really well-watched episodes. And they often repeat it on Saturday Kitchen, and people phone me now, on a Saturday saying, "Oh, look, you're on the telly." And Monty looks so small.
She is a beautiful human being, isn't she?
She was fantastic.
Yeah. And
really
she was
fantastic.
looking after your baby while you were cooking, I noticed.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So that's about 5 years ago. Did it work?
Yeah, well, I've done a
training?
couple of courses since. What it did do was it gave me the confidence, actually, to go on and explore kind of other kind of cookery workshops. And I am pleased to say now that, I do have a few friends that, come over and I cook for.
So, I mean, as I normally do, spoke to a few people that know you, and they both, I think probably more glowing about you than I've ever heard before. Your passion came across very much in both the conversations I had. So, as you know, this podcast is about, where does this inner side come from of people who are doing amazing things? And I think one of the places it comes from, not always, but quite often, it's to do with your childhood. So I know that your mum and dad did a lot of foster caring, didn't they, when you were you growing up? Tell us a bit about that and how it, because most people probably haven't grown up in that environment. Tell us a bit about that.
Sure, yeah. So I've got a lot to thank fostering for, really, because my parents were told that they couldn't have children, and then they fostered my older brother, and I think that just relaxed them. And then a few years later, I naturally came along. And then a few years after that, my twin brother and sister were born on my 6th birthday. And then a few years after that, our youngest brother was born. So I am one of 4 biological kids. But in terms of my family, if you were to say how many brothers and sisters have you got, I probably wouldn't be able to tell you, because there are quite a lot of us.
So how many foster children were there at any one time?
It's quite interesting, actually, because my parents were always involved in the long-term kind of foster care of kids. So, growing up, there were always children there before I was even a thought in their mind. I think the house was largely speaking, quite full. And more recently, in my time, we had 3 siblings. They were 1, 2 and 3 when they arrived, and they're now 16, 17 and 18. So mum and dad, whilst they haven't necessarily supported thousands of kids, they've always done the long-term foster care. And so, there's probably about 25 young people that have been through our family home. And lots of them now are thankfully back with parents or, with family members and thriving. So, yes.
And what impacts? Well, I would have thought there is a connection between what you're doing now and that's what... Tell us a bit about that. What would you think that's really the thing that's led you into what you're doing now? Yeah,
I think so. I think growing up, the kind of family dynamic was always, we knew that we were born into privilege in a way, and I don't mean just financially secure. I mean in terms of mum and dad being a very loving, caring, together family, and creating that safe space really for us to be able to, try new things and, go to places and do things that that you can't do if you've, kind of sadly been born into a little bit of a volatile situation. Yeah. So the family dynamic was always about kind of extending the table. We've got enough, but how can we make sure that goes a little bit further and helps a few more people? So that was definitely the kind of, the core of our being. And, my parents just genuinely loved young people. So, I think it helped them to kind of, stay young. And even once we started flying the nest, all of us, they then kind of went back again. And,
so they're still doing it now, are they?
Still doing it to this day now. Okay. My dad is 70 this year. So, I think they give a lot, but they gain a lot from it too.
So also with you, that's made you also a very generous person and wanting to impact people's lives. I have talked to other people who've grown up in a similar situation to you, and sometimes I've got a sense that they felt they were crowded out by the foster children and maybe didn't feel that they had enough attention. Clearly that's not the case with you.
I think what's quite interesting is my twin brother and sister were born on my 6th birthday, so it felt like I was an only child
Right.
although I wasn't. But it felt like I was an only child for quite some time, because the foster kids were largely speaking always a lot older than me.
Okay.
And so they would always look after me. I there were times, don't get me wrong, where I liked musical cards as a kid. You'd open up the card and it'd sing happy birthday to you. And, there were more than one occasion where you'd go down to open your presents and somebody else has opened your presents before you and they've ripped up your musical card. So, there were moments in my childhood that were, a little bit tough to swallow. But it was all character building, It was like, it wasn't the end of the world, and you dusted yourself off and you celebrated your birthday and had, largely speaking, a fun time. But I think my mum and dad always created a really good environment for us and for others growing up. There was no competition. Even now, kind of all my brothers and sisters, we're all very different. So, I've got a brother that's a professional horse trainer. I've got a sister that's an air hostess. I've got a brother that went into finance. We're all so different, but we're all allowed to be who we are and what we want to be. And I think that's, all credit to them, really.
So apart from the kind of generosity, clearly very compassionate, caring back, what other values were instilled in you in your childhood that's probably impacted what you're doing today?
Yeah, I think it was always about working hard. I think my parents were hard workers, even when, things were difficult at certain points in our lifetime. My mum would have got a second job or my dad would have worked longer hours. There was very much kind of that mindset of, you work hard and good things will happen. So I think we always saw, kind of really good, dedicated, focused people doing their best for themselves and their family. And I think there was always a degree of resilience in the family. So, my dad broke his leg at one point, and that kind of created a huge amount of pressure on the family situation. But, true to form, he, worked hard to get back on that road to recovery and back to work. And my mum was just, an absolute trooper during that time, kind of supporting the family and supporting him. And, like I say, just working harder and making sure that we always had what we always needed. It was interesting growing up. We didn't always have kind of gifts at kind of significant times like Christmas. Like I remember we were a little bit different from the average family because my mum and dad always prioritised kind of travel.
Okay.
So like I remember spending like 2 months in Taipei in Taiwan, which for families locally to us was very, very different.
That was your Christmas present, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, it was. We spent, decent time travelling around. We visited places like Hong Kong and, like amazing now when you look back at it. But that was kind of like our normal at some points. We didn't have a load of plastic toys and a load of rubbish that you'd throw in a bin. We'd have, stories to tell and places, to remember.
Yeah, I probably did buy my kids plastic toys, probably maybe not now, but I also did take them to places like China and Thailand when they were... And they're the things they still talk about today. Yeah. It's not the physical gifts they got, it's the experiences, isn't it? I think probably things are moving a bit that way, aren't they, with Christmas presents and birthday presents. Certainly, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, they are always asking for experiences rather than material things. So obviously you were ahead of the curve on that. Yeah. Let's talk about the spiritual side of your background. Was there a spiritual dimension to your... there definitely was. So we were all members of the local church. At one point, me and my brothers and sisters were the entire choir, and I'm as good at singing as I am at cooking. Right. So that's like really rubbish. So that's why no one else came, then. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we cleared the decks. So we were the church choir, and it was brilliant because we used to get paid for singing at weddings and funerals, and they'd give you a pair of Clark shoes. So it was all good fun. I used to get. I'm a lot older than you, but I used to get 50p for a wedding. A lot of money in those days. Absolutely, I think it was £7 by the time I got to it. But it was quite a good, fun and a good experience and a little bit of a money spinner. And actually, the church was brilliant
brilliant for us because they had a really good youth section, and there was quite a bit of panto and, you know, kind of amateur dramatics. And yeah, it was all just really good fun. We'd go and we lived opposite a cricket field, and often, you know, the church would organise, you know, like rounders tournaments and stuff, or we'd go off on trips and play in streams and stuff. So yeah, it was always really good fun. And then I went to a church school. So I went to St Mary Redcliffe School, which is the slogan is a Christian community committed to excellence. And it was in, you know, the city centre. Yeah, I loved school. I really loved school, and I think I greatly benefited from the diversity of people that I collided with at school, because I never stayed in the local area for my education. I did for obviously the infants and primary school, but then kind of went a little bit further afield than most people, and benefited hugely from that diversity, because there were people from all over, different religions, different races, different belief systems. It was just a brilliant place, and I think that helped to shape, me.
Yeah, I mean, this is I'm getting a bit of a theme here, that you've kind of been quite eclectic in terms of your experiences, which has kind of helped formed what you're doing now. So let's get on to that. So obviously you've done a lot of things, and you still do a lot of things. I can see your parents' hard work shining through here. But how, because some people listen to this, and there's a lot of talk about purpose and finding what your niche is in the world, and you seem to be someone that's really found that. Yeah. How did you find it? And in answering the question, hopefully we can help some people listening who are struggling to what am I meant to be doing with my life kind of question. How did you find out your niche in life?
So it came at a troubled time, if I'm honest. Life wasn't going particularly well in all areas. My youngest brother was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. So he had the size of a melon kind of weighing down on his chest every day. And it was a difficult time because he was going back and forth to the GP for about 18 months, and nobody could detect what was going on until, you know, one day we went to a dermatologist at a private clinic, and she nailed it straight away. She knew exactly what was wrong, and it was a godsend that we collided with her, because if we hadn't, they said that he probably had about 2 weeks to live.
Wow.
So, you know, this was the youngest of the four of us.
This is the twin brother?
No, this is the youngest. So the twins are born on my birthday. So the youngest always naturally assumed that every brother and sister was born on the same day, because he always had, you know, double birthdays. Okay, yeah. But Paul, he was the lovely one. Not that we're not lovely people, but he is the special one, really, in the way that he's got all the nice bits of everybody all rolled into one kid. So in true Josh form, he said, look, I'm the youngest and I'm the fittest and I'm going to beat it. And that's exactly what he did. But I'll never forget it. I was in the medical suite with him, and he took that line and I fainted. So yeah, it hit me for six, really.
And what age were you at this time?
So he was about 18, 19. So I would have been about 28. Okay. But yeah, I hit the deck, bless him. So he was actually the one trying to look after me at that moment in time. But basically, that was a significant life event, clearly for him, but also for us too, because we supported him through that. I was also at the time studying a part-time MBA, Master's degree in Business Admin at UWE. Alongside that, working full-time in football. To the outside world, I probably achieved what people thought was an amazing feat. So I was the first female academy director at a male football club in the country. I was relatively young in that role. And we had at the start of that journey a 40% chance of passing. And come the end, we passed with flying colours, and there were people all over kind of speaking to us about what good practice, best practice kind of looked like in that sector. So had a lot of success professionally, but felt completely and utterly empty.
Describe that emptiness then.
Well, I think it was in part because I was on the MBA programme, and you'd study modules like human resource management, and you'd start to question some of the things that you were experiencing, some of the things that you were part of. And some of the things that were just happening, in that sector. So, you could bite the ear off of a fellow colleague, and next week somebody else would come in and offer you an extra £1 million to go and play for them, and it was just getting to that point where I was just starting to question whether or not I was truly aligned with the environment in which I was in. So there were some elements of it that were really good fun. It was fast paced. It was, you had to make quick decisions, and, it wasn't bad if you made the wrong decision as long as you did it in quick time. It was great in so many respects. But then there were just other elements of it where I just thought, goodness me, there are people here that are getting paid millions of pounds a week, and bless them, they can't read and write, or, they're not necessarily behaving as well as you'd expect them to behave. And it was just kind of misaligned. These players, they weren't necessarily connecting with the fan base, and I found that ever-growing disparity quite difficult.
Did you try and do something about that then?
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much you can do, though, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can be responsible, or you can be accountable but not responsible. So let me give you, for instance, in terms of what I mean by that. So when I was in charge of the charity there, my job was to try and fill the stadium, right? Now, unless you're playing good football, it's very difficult to fill a stadium. I can be the best community director on the planet and talk about the power of football and how it can be used as a force for good. But the reality is that fan base, all 20,000 people that want to come and watch a game on a Saturday, they won't come back if the football's rubbish and it's not entertaining. So there were some elements of it where, you couldn't control the outcome. And I'm not saying that it's important to control everything, but, you've got to stand a fighting chance sometimes, haven't you, of being successful. And, there were just things that, I wasn't the director of football, I wasn't the manager, I wasn't on the touchline.
So this was all coming to a head when your brother was ill, before that presumably, and it seems like that was a pivotal moment. So did you leave soon after that, or?
Yeah, so I managed my exit strategy really carefully. Right. So there are bits of that I can't talk too freely about. But I just realised that the landscape around me was changing, and whilst I could have changed and evolved, I didn't want to. So there was a new kind of model that was being built around me, and in principle it was a really good thing. It was a kind of multi-sport, bit like the Barcelona model. But there were people locally that had supported the football club for a long time, and then because of that new model and the new people that had come into that structure, actually I felt like a lot of that goodwill was forgotten. And so at that point it was just quite a challenging time. So I sold a house, I bought a house. The story in between is that I was trying to get Josh out of hospital one Christmas, and I just asked him, what is top of the mountain? What are we going to do when we get you out of this hospital bed? And he said, well, it's interesting. He said, because I've been thinking about it loads, and the best time really, when I think about it, was our childhood. I'd love to get back there. So do you think we could all live in the same house again? So basically, I sold my house, I bought a large house, and I built this kind of commune where I brought everybody back under one roof.
Everybody? Who's that?
So my mum, my dad, my brothers, my sister.
Okay.
Interestingly now, Josh has got his own house, and he's married, and he's, out of the country at the minute on his honeymoon. So it's a brilliant story, really, because he's now got to that point where he's been cancer-free for quite a number of years, and he's really enjoying life and thriving. But actually the bulk of us are still under one roof and enjoying living together and all the great stuff that brings about. So I still live with my foster brother and sister.
So I want to get back to this kind of not mini, but this kind of crisis point, because it seemed, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me you were quite achiever orientated, driven, career focused, and suddenly the incident with Josh almost snapped you out of that and made you, I don't know, have a bigger... I mean, for most people, this happens later in life.
Yes.
I talked to quite a few people, and include myself in that. I had a major crisis, probably mid-40s, early to mid-40s, and changed a lot of what I did with my life. You've had it quite early there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, presumably that's kind of impacted your life to date since then.
Yeah, completely. I mean, I got to what I thought was the top of the mountain, quite honestly, looked out and thought, this is not what I was expecting it to be. And then when you really think about what that next step is, then the next step would have been, well, could I be the chief exec of a football club in the Football League? And then the question is, would you want to be? Like, do you actually have what it takes to be that person? Mm-hmm. And quite honestly, I don't think I was ruthless enough.
What was it that was unfulfilling then about that time?
So I just think football is fantastic for so many things, but it's just so bonkers in so many other ways. So, the sheer money that's involved and the disparity between those that are playing top flight and the grassroots, of the game, it literally couldn't be, kind of more further from each other at times.
Yeah, I think one of the people I talked to, can't remember which one, but they talked about you having a drive to reverse injustice.
Yeah.
So I wonder whether the injustice side of that is what was really getting to you. And actually, interestingly, that's probably my main driver in life is I hate injustice.
Yeah.
I've always hated it. I remember when I was a 6-year-old and something happened and I was so angry about the injustice in this situation. So I think it's always been there. Maybe with you too, that's possibly, and I'm just don't want to put words in your mouth. But
change happens, doesn't it? There's a bit of a formula for it, I think, sometimes. Like, change happens when there's a bit of dissatisfaction times by the vision for your future, and as long as it's, that's greater than the resistance to change, you normally make a move, don't you? So I think I just recognised that, there were so many good things about it, but I'd kind of served my time, and I wanted to use the skills and the connections and all the things that were good about my experience in that for that greater good. And I should also be quite truthful. I was working 70 hours a week, 60, 70 hours a week. It was quite intense. To be a female in that environment, you don't just have to be as good as your male counterparts. You've got to be twice as good.
Well, this is the problem.
And so, good sometimes is making sure that you work harder, and you kind of try and gain those little marginal gains, where you can. I mean, Alex Ferguson, to coin his phrase, he always said hard work beats talent. When talent doesn't work hard, well, there was nobody that was more harder working in that environment than I was. And you get to a stage sometimes where you just reach that burnout point, don't you? You just know that that's not sustainable, it's not healthy, it's not happy, and you're better off doing something that is going to help you in kind of other aspects of your life. And, the simple truth is, I don't know if I'd have my son now. If I've got a 6-year-old son, he's the absolute apple of my eye, and I don't know if I would have ever fulfilled that element of my life had I have stayed doing what I was doing.
No,
you just don't know, do you?
Which is sad, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you should be able to do that job and have a family as a woman, and unfortunately the society is still biased against women in those kind of positions, particularly in football, which is probably more misogynistic than most.
And there are women that do achieve that, but there's always some element of trade-off.
But there's still a sense that they need to be exhibiting more of their masculine side to achieve that.
Completely.
Which organisations, football clubs, businesses, politics would be better if there was more femininity.
Yeah.
Which obviously women are going to bring more of that to the party.
Yeah, and vulnerability, actually it's all right to not be all right, you should be able to speak about these things.
Yeah. Let's get on to how you found out what you're meant to be doing after the football side. So how did you get into what you're doing now?
So I bought a house. It was a renovation project. So I was doing this house up for my family to move in, whilst also creating Community of Purpose, CIC. So it was a project that actually kept me sane, because I basically saw all my life savings going one way, really. That was, into this house that I was trying desperately to make habitable for my family. And it was just like, that analogy when people say like you're flying the plane whilst you're trying to build the plane. Well, it was a bit like that. So created this vehicle. I had a friend at the time that had a couple of projects that were great projects, great social value projects that were doing wonderful things in the city, but there wasn't necessarily a vehicle that was going to take them from good to great. So I recognised that there needed to be a thing, something that was going to encapsulate these kind of projects, and potentially, kind of grow other projects and make the city a better place for children and young people. So I think it kind of stemmed from my childhood, so the fostering in particular. So I knew I was born lucky. My foster brothers and sisters weren't so much. They actually had a really difficult time, quite a few of them. There were young people that were brought into custody by the police because they were strapped into a buggy in the garden at midnight and gone, So, I just recognised that I was born lucky, but that wasn't a situation that everybody found themselves in. I mean, even if we look at my education, there were young people at my primary school that were much brighter than me, but they would have had a really difficult conversation with their parents about going on to further or higher education, in the same way that I would have had a really difficult conversation with my parents about not going. So the expectations were somewhat really different. So, those kids, they couldn't cost the family purse, and actually they had to contribute to the family purse. So I always knew I was advantaged. Yeah. But I just wanted, when you talk about that injustice, I just recognised that education was something that was going to, level up the playing field for so many. So whilst I was at the football club, I actually created an education pathway. It was a MBQ level 2, a BTEC level 3, foundation degree at level 4, and then I co-wrote with the University of the West of England a full degree programme in sport and entrepreneurship. And it was really that journey that kind of helped guide my next steps. It was like, we didn't necessarily want young people kind of not fulfilling their potential because the environment wasn't right. And so, I'm sure you're familiar with this. There's something called ikigai, isn't there? The world needs it, you're good at it, and you can, make it all stack up commercially so that it becomes a thing. And I just recognised that, there were some big critical challenges that our city was facing, and there wasn't necessarily a vehicle that could help bring people together, unite them in a single mission, and then kind of, create that kind of change that we all wanted and needed to see.
So most people, they would have similar desires to you, but the difference between you and most people is you got up and did something about it. So where does that drive come from? Where does the energy come from? Because, these things, I'm sure you've had things that haven't worked, failures, but resilient was another word that was used to describe you, actually, that you bounce down, fall over and bounce back again. Yeah. Some people would have given up. So what is it about you that's made you carry on fighting? Yeah,
it's an interesting one. I think the test of a person is never how they can deal with success, right? We can all do that, I think the test of someone's true character is how they deal with, difficulty and challenge. And I was just really aware that there are a lot of young people in our city, through no fault of their own, are born into this challenge. And I felt like I had the skills, the experience, and also the support. Let's not forget, I was living in a family home where there was, even at 36, I was 36 when I bought that house, there was a family unit around me that supported me so that I could take this leap of faith. Because who knows, at that point, whether or not this was going to be a thing or not. I couldn't predict it was going to be successful. I would give myself a good chance, of being successful, but you just don't know, do you, sometimes? So yeah, I think the environment was helpful for me. I think the fact that there were other people that believed in me, that was helpful. I think there were people that needed me, that was helpful. So I think it was a mix of quite a few things.
And how long have you been doing Community of Purpose now?
So yeah, we're running into our 9th year now. So we've been operating since 2016, so eight solid years. And I'm really fortunate because there's not a day that I get up that I do not enjoy doing what I'm doing. I mean, we laugh and joke in the office about, never needing an alarm clock to wake us up because you wake up on purpose. I wake up at 4:00 most days. I do 2 hours work before 6.
It's impressive.
It's the way that I manage motherhood, actually.
Okay.
So then I have to take my son to school.
He wakes you up at 4 then? Or?
No. I'm the one waking him up at 6. Right. We leave the house at 7:15, and then I've got a bit of a drive, and then I'm back to my desk at 9:00, and then we kind of rerun the fun in the afternoon. So my day does not look like most people's days. On my email footer it says, if you've got this email at a weird time, please don't feel obliged to reply because this works for me, but I recognise it might not work for you. But I think this community now is gone from strength to strength because people recognise that, they don't want to just do no harm to the world. They actually want to do good. And, by creating a community of purpose, I mean, we've got 71 businesses now that are investing in this community. And they're not just kind of able to demonstrate their own input and their own output. They're also able to kind of, measure that of the community. So we're achieving wonderful things, in a space where normally social impact is slow to show. But, 8 years on and because of the nature of, having a force, of 71 businesses and a lot of volunteers and a lot of really great people in the city that want, young people to thrive and to flourish. And it's been quite successful.
I was going to ask you as well, how have you changed in the 9 years of doing Community of Purpose?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think I've actually changed quite significantly since Christmas.
This last Christmas gone?
Yeah,
right.
So just before Christmas, I think I got to a point where I was fraying around the edges a little bit. Right. So super driven, very committed, will run through walls. But sometimes, we all recognise, don't we, that kind of that drive and that determination isn't always helpful and isn't always sustainable. So what's been quite interesting since December is I've slowed down. And one of your, points in your book is about kind of recognising silence more. And yeah, it's just quite interesting. I've slowed down, but what's been quite incredible for me is that in some areas of work life, I've sped up. So by slowing down, I've actually been able to, make better choices and better business decisions. And we're actually now starting to see some, real positive fruits from a very different approach than what is my normal MO.
The way I describe it is doing less but achieving more.
Yeah.
Because, same as you, I mean, up to probably beyond the age you are now, I was probably running around like a headless chicken, doing, achiever. And yes, stuff got done, obviously, but, I probably was on the edge of burnout. And as one gets older, I think you learn to slow down and actually get more done with doing less. But I don't know how you teach that to people without the burnout. Yeah,
you've kind of got to get to your own.
Yeah, I think probably having kids probably helps a bit with that, because obviously if you want to be a good parent, which I'm sure you do, then you need to take time out for them.
Yeah, I think my son has taught me a different degree of patience. So I think I've always been reasonably patient, but I think when you've got a child of your own, you just want to be as patient and as understanding and as nurturing as possible, don't you? So that definitely will have played a part, I'm sure.
I want to talk about the emotional side, because what you're doing with young people in Bristol, if I was doing that, I can imagine probably doing quite a lot of crying when you see the situations those kids are in. And I think for me, in terms of what we do, it started out as this is a good thing to do, this is the right thing to do, and I probably wasn't as emotionally engaged as I am now. Now it's much more driven by the kind of heart side, as I'm sure it is for you. So how do you deal with that? I mean, without being a pile of tears and not doing anything.
I think sometimes I am a pile of tears, and I don't actually think that showing that vulnerability is necessarily a negative. I think sometimes when I've been vulnerable and I've shared some of the critical challenges that these young people are facing and somebody like myself in an organisation like this are facing into, people are largely speaking quite receptive of that and quite keen to support where they can. So it's not always a bad thing. I know that, I've been asked to speak at several events, and actually when the emotions have got the better of me and I've, found it quite difficult, people have then really dug deep, and it's resulted in, a huge amount of money being raised for the entity.
Yes, I've had the same.
So it's interesting sometimes when you show that side, and it's not always easy. I mean, you've got to bear in mind I've come from supportive family, but then I've been in an environment like football where actually it is quite masculine, and you don't often feel like you can show any weakness, and then all of a sudden being in this situation where actually there are young people in our community that are finding life really difficult, and my job is actually to kind of shine a light on some of that so that people understand those challenges and can help and respond and support those young people. So like, to give you an example, one of the big challenges that I face is through our Break Free project. So we tackle holiday hunger. And every 6 weeks, the school gates close and the tap is turned off on the free school meal for many children in our city, about 36,000 of them. And you'll be familiar with school holidays. If you think back to some of yours, I'm sure they were the best times of your life. And if you were like me, you got to go on lovely holidays and spend time with your family and your friends and do great things without the pressure of school. But actually for some of these kids, it's a really difficult time because they're not in a position to, go on a day trip, let alone go on a holiday. They're in that position where they're already accessing food banks. So to provide an additional meal a day, times by however many days that school holiday period, times by however many kids in the family, it puts these families under huge pressure. So we tackle holiday hunger. We basically take kids off of the estate and we take them to amazing attractions, but it's done to feed them in a really dignified way. So they get hot porridge and lots of fruit for breakfast, and then they get a warm lunch, and then we give them care packages if they need it at the end of the day. But the biggest challenge for me is that there will be kids that turn up to get on that coach, not having secured a place, and they're there in the hope that somebody doesn't turn up.
Wow.
And so that's really difficult because...
How do you say no to them?
Well, it's really difficult. I mean, we've got a people carrier, we've got extra ways of trying to get kids there. But, there have been on occasion times where we've had to drive off. And you don't know what that young person's going to experience that day. Is that the day that they go back and mum and dad are really stressed and there's a domestic situation? Or is it the time that they go and try, a cigarette or something worse for the first time? Or is it the day that they go and shoplift for the first time? You just don't know, what they're going to experience. And, sadly in our community, a year ago, there were 2 boys that were fatally stabbed to death because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. So, it is difficult to not put too fine a point on it because actually there is a huge, kind of difference between thriving and finding yourself in a really difficult situation. And so that's, one of the reasons why we're so driven now, because we know that every decision we make, it does have an impact, a real impact on the lives and the futures of those young kids.
I mean, that comes with pressure though, doesn't it?
Huge pressure.
Pressure.
Huge
well,
pressure.
If only we'd raised another X, we could have done that.
Yeah. And
how do you stop that getting, because, there's obviously a really positive thing about that, but also it could be unrelenting, couldn't it?
I'm really lucky because I've got an amazing group of people around me. So That's, the team. I remember at Christmas time, I was getting ready to take on another project and tackle another mountain. And the question, 5 whys, why from somebody else in the team. And it just kind of made me stop, pause and reflect on why I was going to go and take on another big challenge when actually there was still so much that we needed to achieve.
Yeah.
And so, I think I'm really lucky because I work with some of the best people in the industry, and they're all focused on doing the best that we can with the resources that we've got. And all right, we're a relatively small entity in the grand scheme of things, but we're measured on our impact. And I think we can rightly be proud of the fact that based on the resource levels that we've got, there's not really much more that you could do to optimise the impact that we have.
So how do you look after yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm normally in bed by 7:30.
Really?
Yeah, early to bed, early up. I really love walking. I like being outdoors. I mean, every 6 weeks with the school holidays, we actually end up getting involved in some amazing activities. I'll find myself in a forest, in a rewilding project, or I might be in a city farm with a load of kids. So, as much as I drive my keyboard for most of the year, actually for 13 weeks of it, you'll find me literally knee deep in mud and being around young people, and that's quite restorative.
Well, I was going to talk about spirituality, which isn't religion, but for me, spirituality is the ability to connect to yourself, connect to others, and connect to nature. So that's the connecting to nature bit. You talked a bit about silence. Is there a spiritual dimension to that?
No, I think the issue is I'm not very good at it. So my dad often said, look, you've been given 2 ears and 1 mouth and you should use that ratio. And he meant that in the kindest possible way, I'm sure. But he's absolutely right. I mean, I queue up, in terms of active listening, I should be better at it. But 9 times out of 10, my mind is running wild with ideas and thoughts and things that I want to get out and share with the world. And so, I should listen better, and I should cope with silence better.
I don't like the word should, though. But
shoulda, coulda, woulda.
How each individual connects is different. I mean, I do a bit of meditation. I'm also probably not very good at it, but I find it quite meditative being at the gym and climbing the stair thing.
Yep.
When you are just really disengaged from the brain because the body's hurting too much.
Yeah.
So I find that. And then surprisingly, come back from the gym and I've got a good new idea about something. And I sometimes take things to the gym that I want to mull over, and they're just sitting there. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, So do you have that time out, as it were? Yeah,
so I've got a driveway that's a little bit on an incline, and I tend to pace up and down it.
Right.
And I put some earplugs in and I listen to a podcast, or I listen to an Audible book, or listen just to music. And I find that really, really useful for me. And I enjoy actually spending time, in that family unit. And sometimes that is quite nourishing. So I'm actually quite boring, to be honest, but I like it.
And do you still, obviously travel was a part of your formative development, do you still travel?
Yeah, I travel quite a bit. I don't do as many long haul flights nowadays, not just for environmental reasons, but because actually I quite like going to Devon and Cornwall. You get the right weather, and even during the close season, actually, you'll find me. I've been spending quite a bit of time in St Ives lately. And that's quite good. I took my son a couple of weekends ago to Paris for the weekend. And that was, quite a positive experience. So, haven't had any major long haul flights in a while. But now Monty's fast approaching 6. We're probably getting to that stage where he would benefit from different cultures and different experiences like I did when I was his age.
Obviously, you're still very young. What?
Thanks.
Always got to
I
compliment
don't
the guests.
feel it. People are starting to look at my forehead now, and I'm sure it's because it's like got lines, laughter lines around the eyes and deep lines on the forehead.
That's to do with being a parent, not the age. What do you think you haven't done yet that you will do?
That's a really interesting one, because I've just got to a stage in my life where things feel fantastic. So it's felt like, up until this point, quite a hard slog. And so I'm actually looking forward to the next 12, 18 months of just enjoying what I'm doing and operating at the pace and the intensity that we're operating at.
So what's triggered that change? I mean, you're going back to this time at Christmas now.
Yeah, I
aren't
think
you?
I just realised that actually it was just once sustainable.
So what was it? Was there a particular incident?
No, nothing particular. Just literally trying too hard, if truth be told.
Yeah.
The fun factor was starting to diminish, and that's dangerous, isn't it? And,
it is.
And you think, well, you know, if this is life, if it's work, eat, sleep, work, eat, sleep, work, eat, sleep, and that's it. You know, actually, that's not going to be good for me and good for other people. And whilst I'm not, the sole key player in this operation anymore, because there are some amazing people that I work with, are constantly, making improvements and driving the machine forward. Yeah, I don't want to not be part of it. And I think, you don't want to fall out of love with something in the same way that I fell out of love with football. I can't afford to do that again.
So is some of that about trusting your team, do you think, to do the job?
Yeah, I mean, it's really wonderful when you get to a point where, all of the people in the building are more capable than you are at the things that they're entrusted to do.
It's a good place to be.
It's beautiful. It's so beautiful.
I know, because I've not been there, and I have been there.
Yeah.
And I know where I'd rather be.
And I feel like I'm there now. There are people in this team that are doing things that I can't do, and that I'm not naturally good at. And, it's just taken us to different levels. And it's just a joy to be part of it without the pressure of feeling like I've got to constantly direct where that next move is. So in answer to your question, I have thought about what the next steps are. I mean, lots of people ask me all the time, this is a very Bristol, greater Bristol region entity. Have you got any plans to make it, bigger? And, the reality is we've spent a lot of time working on our systems and our processes. And so all of our projects probably could become national projects. It was actually whilst chatting to a colleague of mine about a year ago when we were looking at our laptops and it said Intel inside. And I thought, that's an interesting concept, isn't it? Intel, they make the bit inside the computer that works, right? But they don't have to worry about making the computers. They're quite satisfied with being the brain power. So, eventually, might we socially franchise the stuff that we know that we're reasonably good at? Yes. Am I inclined to sell it? No. Why? Because I'd like to give it away and I'd like to create a bigger community that's going to have a far-reaching impact beyond Bristol. But do I want to be in Derby at 2 o'clock on a Friday? Probably not.
It's probably more like a franchise model then, isn't it? Yeah, socially franchise it, but not worry about the commerciality of it, but maybe get back involved at a point where it's a national entity and we can then start having conversations with national investors. That excites me. So is that the legacy that you want to...
Yeah, I want to help as many young people as possible, but I want to do it in a way where quality counts and that is the golden thread throughout everything that operation stands for. So I've seen great organisations lose their way a little bit because they've tried to grow too quickly, and they've spread their resources too thin. And I think, the issue at the minute is that my city is fantastic for so many reasons, but there are so many, disparities there and things that need tackling that we haven't achieved and fulfilled our mission yet. So there's a lot to do. And at a point, we'll know as a collective when that's right, to grow and to do things differently. But for now, I'm just really happy. Is
there a gift that you've got to share with the world that you haven't shared yet?
Is there a gift? That's a great question, and it's definitely stopped me in my tracks. Like I say, I think it's this blueprint. I think there's a lot of really good things that we've got that can be shared. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to the day when, that becomes a thing.
Someone who I talked to, if they had to write a summary of your life, said it would be love poured out to everyone, which I thought was wonderful.
Yeah, that is wonderful.
And the other one said she made everything better.
Nice.
So, yeah, keep doing it.
Thanks.
So we're coming to the end of the time we've got. There's a couple of questions I'd ask all my guests at the end. And the first one is a piece of advice you wish you'd had at the beginning that you didn't. And what would that be?
So I actually made some notes on this one, and I said, focus on solving a real problem for a specific group of people and do it better than anyone else. I think in the early days, I just threw a load of jelly and saw what stuck, right? And actually, I could have probably saved a lot of pain and misery by being more focused and more intentional. But obviously, that wasn't what I did, and things evolved, and thankfully I found that focus and I found that intention.
Yeah.
But it did take a while.
I think to some degree the throwing the jelly at the wall is probably part of the process for many people, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, how do you find it where the focus should be?
Yeah.
I think I've done a lot of jelly throwing. And you may not have had any advice that you've ignored, but have you had any bad advice that you've chosen to ignore?
Yeah, stick to the plan.
Stick to the plan. Okay, tell us a bit more about that.
I think sometimes you can, for all intents and purposes, have a great plan, but the world around you changes. I mean, we've only got to look back a few years. I mean, 5 years ago, you wrote your wonderful book during lockdown. Who would have predicted that lockdown would have been a thing and coronavirus would have been a global pandemic? So I think sometimes you've got, you've got a plan. Of course you've got a plan. It's great to have one, but you've got to be brave enough to go beyond that plan when the time is right.
Be flexible.
Yeah.
I think a lot of organisations and businesses don't do long-term planning anymore. I mean, yes, they have a loose direction of travel, but if you're too rigid, you're going to be in trouble, aren't you? Because we live in a very changeable world. So next year could be completely different. I mean, current events a good indication of that.
And I think there are business examples where, they've probably stuck too rigidly to their plan and the plan was wrong. So, if you look back to, my childhood, you'd buy sweets and CDs from Woolworths. Woolworths did not evolve. They kept doing what they did because it was easy. But, the world around them changed. Conversely, Asda, that started out as a dairy farm, now you can go to my local Asda that's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and buy some white goods if you want. And so, I think in businesses it's easy to choose easy, but then easy becomes hard, and so you then choose your hard. So don't always stick to that plan because it might not be a good one.
Well, Kodak is a classic example of that, isn't it?
Great example.
They should have been the leaders in digital photography. They stuck to paper and went out of business. And from my book, The Fourth Bottom Line, I've written about 50 characteristics of good leadership. Which one of those 50, is there one of the 50 that's particularly drawing you to work on for yourself at the moment?
Yeah, page 125, stay silent.
Okay.
I think because I was always in a busy household where there was an awful lot of noise, I've just been around a lot of chatter. and like I said earlier, Dad tried to help me out by saying, look, 2 ears, 1 mouth, use them in that ratio. So I took a lot of meaning from that book, from your book, and that particular quality, because I think I could work on that more.
I think we all could, couldn't we? That more silence in the world. I think we'd have a different world. Great. Well, that's a good point to end, I think. Well, a period of silence. No, we won't do that. So let's finish there. Thanks so much for joining me today, Amy. You are a massive inspiration to many people, not just in the Bristol area, but all over the country. And I'm sure you will, we could have you back in 5 years' time, and there'll be some other amazing things that you've done. So thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you ever so much for having me. Really enjoyed it.
We really hope you enjoyed this episode of The Fourth Bottom Line. Please hit subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode, and do leave a rating and a review wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to learn more about my work, follow me on LinkedIn, visit my website paulhargreaves.co.uk, or look out for my 2 books, Forces for Good and The Fourth Bottom Line. Thank you so much for listening.